Gros Morne Park. It's the dead of winter. Snow squalls drift down from the mountains. A cold wind blows in off the sea. There are no tourists around this time of year. The park is almost deserted. Almost. Carol Pittman grew up in Ottawa. She came to Bon Bay a few years ago and decided to settle here. For an artist, the park is a perfect model, but you have to get used to its moods.
If you see something nice, you have to have everything ready to run. The light changes or the clouds change, conditions change so fast. I like August a lot, the early fall, because you have really nice light then. But March is nice too if you can stand to go out in the cold. It's really nice all year though. Because it has such great stretches of forest and such a big area that, well, I find it difficult to put into one little painting.
It is a big area, 700 square miles in fact, all controlled by Parks Canada. But behind this postcard scenery, there's a story of frustration at the way the park has affected people who live in the small communities which lie in the fringes of the park, towns where the park boundary comes right up to people's backyards, where park regulations have all but taken away the traditional things people did in the country: cutting wood, snaring animals. You don't have to go far to hear that different story. Just ask Carol Pittman's husband, Gary. He was born here. He's seen what's happened since the park opened in 1973.
With all the environment that they have something like 700 square miles. There's no one in the community, I don't believe, that feels that the park should have come so close to control the way of lives of people. The park's here for a long time, but they fail to realize or to really understand the impact that it can have on the community, on our children coming up. When I grew up, as kids, we would sit snares sort of up behind the house. Well, now the park boundary is behind the house. And the kids around in the community, they're going up illegally to sort of fulfill these things that keep kids busy in Newfoundland outports, sitting rabbit snares in the fall. They're going up there and doing it illegally now. Really, the way the law states that they aren't supposed to be there. And it really doesn't add to the psychological feeling, a good feeling, that people could have in the communities for a park. Most people, they feel that wherever they go, there's a warden on their track. This fall, for instance, I know one case of a fellow in peeling birch rind off some birch trees. He's done this traditionally to light his fires. That's how he gets it. And there's a warden coming out and telling him he's not supposed to do this. Is there really a need for that? And this sort of leads to a sort of hostile feeling. A lot of people don't like the idea of going in to peel birch rind or going in to clear out a woods road for the winter. It seems there's an attitude with the park wardens that if there's a local person in the woods in the fall, he's in doing something wrong, and it's altogether incorrect.
Frank Piercy and Alvin Sparks are heading into the woods behind Rocky Harbour to cut wood. Frank is building a new garage. Alvin plans to repair his garage and fix up his boathouse. These woods are part of Gros Morne Park. You can only cut wood in certain areas, and you can only take so much. Before Alvin and Frank can start cutting, they have to get a permit from Parks Canada.
Well, you just go up to the park office, pay $2, and you get a permit.
No problem.
Cutting permit. No.
So is that a satisfactory system to you fellas?
Well, it is. The only thing, they've got certain blocks cut out for you to cut in, and, well, some of those blocks is not too much.
Well, what do you mean certain blocks?
Well, okay, they've got an area 9.1 square miles, and they've got it divided up into, I don't know, some of the little cutting blocks. And you can get a permit for, well, whichever one of those blocks you want to cut in.
Isn't there enough wood in that area to satisfy people's needs?
Well, for now it is, but, you know, say what about in 30, 40, 50 years' time? You know, what will happen?
These woods are also supposed to be good for snaring, but the park has rules on that too. It's limited to a few weeks in the winter, mid-January to March, and only rabbits can be caught.
Well, you can only catch rabbits in the winter. And that's all you can catch. I mean, you can't set a fox snare, or you can't set a trap for a beaver, or, you know. We can hear the old fellas talking about, well, they used to go back one time back and cut a snare and go back for a week or, 2 weeks or whatever. I mean, that's all we can do is just sit down and listen to it. We never got any hopes of doing it. Not back here.
Have you fellas ever had any run-ins with the park wardens?
No, I haven't, because, well, I only set a few snares when the season's open, and that's it. That's all you can do.
Do you see them around very often?
Quite often. Back and forth on the roads. I've been stopped a couple of times, searched.
For what?
For firearms.
2 summers ago, I was just in back here. There's a place where the salmon run, and we were in there, me and 3 more friends of mine. We were in there staying for 2 nights doing a bit of fishing. And the next morning we woke up and there was 4 wardens over sat down watching us. Well, they weren't sat down watching us, they were trying to get a fire going and freezing it. So came and figured we were in there poaching, and so we lit the fire and gave them a cup of tea and they came on. It's just a feeling that you just can't move, you know? I mean, those guys just came in and they said, well, this is land, we're going to take it. I mean, you fellas don't touch it. So, I mean, how can we have a friendly attitude towards those guys? I mean, they're the ones that's taking our freedom, right?
Gordon Pittman has been building boats in Rocky Harbour for 18 years. Gordon used to get his wood from around Rocky Harbour, but he can't do that anymore. Parks Canada won't allow any cutting for commercial use. If business picks up, Gordon will have to go 30 miles to get outside the park and cut his wood.
I don't understand why he wants all this big area for the park. You know, why did he want the timber? Why can't, you can't let people go in and cut timber like we always went in. But now, we always used to be in around the sawn lumber ones. Well, I spent 12 or 13 years down there. Wintertime, sawn 60 and 70 and 100,000. And you go back there now, saw a couple 100,000, 100,000 in the old winter for fellow. Mind you, a man could go in and have 4 or 5 men employed. If they allow you to go in, but they won't let you go in. And you get a crowd will come here and tell we people what's in there. And we've lived in there all our life. And they know more than we do. And that's what as far as I'm concerned.
When the park was first proposed, did you have any idea this was going to happen?
No, I didn't think this would be as bad. Well, as far as I understand, one of the parks that started here, they was going in on the back, in 3 or 4 miles, in on the back with the road. They were going to put a road on the back from up there the eastern arm, or Deer Arm we call it, in on the back, what we call Deer Arm Pond, and that's where you were going to have the park.
So they weren't going to come near the community at all?
No, well, this is what we understand, that I understood, but now with Deavers, they're down now on this side of the road, 150 feet on this side of the road.
So you had no idea that this is going to affect you like this?
No, I didn't know. I didn't think they'd stop me from cutting.
So you think most people are unhappy that the park came?
There's more unhappy with the park here. I think it's the worst thing ever happened to us around there. This park coming there, as far as I'm concerned. Worst thing ever happened.
Along the coast through Gros Morne Park, there are a few small villages. Pretty spots, like here at Sally's Cove. Most people here depend on the fishery, especially lobsters. The people of Sally's Cove were stubborn. They insisted on staying put when Parks Canada wanted them to move. But other people did move to towns like Rocky Harbour, where the park built them new homes in exchange for their old ones. No one was forced to move, but some people feel the park made it difficult for those who wanted to stay where they were.
Their sons weren't allowed to build a new house next to them. And this has always gone on in small communities. My son would generally build a house next to me if he wished to. And there was a man, he was probably in his 50s or whatever, and his children weren't permitted to build a house there. So they were going, if they wanted to live in the area, they were going to have to move to Rocky Harbour, Cowhead, or Norris Point. So automatically, they said, well, you know, they were feeling when we get older, if we're up there, at least our children will be near us. First of all, the park came and they said, well, you have to move. And people said, no, we don't, we're not going to move. And then they said, well, you don't have to, but we'll give you a house plus so many $1,000 incidentals, $5,000, I believe. And it looked good to them at the time, and they did move. I remember one case where they were so eager to get into the new houses before Christmas. And they just didn't think logically. They didn't really analyze the situation and say, well, like, is this really what I want? The park built so many houses, showed them the houses, and then of course they would compare this to what they had, and it seemed so good. But now here they are, they can't afford the electrical bills, they can't afford the oil bills. Normally they could even go with a hand sleigh or a hand cat and go up behind the house and chop down a few sticks of wood and keep themselves warm. Now they're living in a community. They can't do that because they have, say, electric heat, or if they do put in a wood stove, first thing they need generally is a vehicle. And maybe some of those people never did have a vehicle. And that's produced an additional hardship for them. They aren't really at home anymore. Maybe after years they would be, but right now they're still sort of feeling, you know, they would rather be back where they came from.
This is the house Parks Canada built in Rocky Harbour for Albert Ellsworth, a fisherman who lived in a tiny community called Woody Cove. The park boundary is just a couple of 100 yards behind his new home.
Could you have stayed down Woody Cove if you wanted to?
Oh yes, sir. Yes, I would stay down Woody Cove, but they were going to build a house for me, for a house. Well, at present time had a very small house at home, and well, I'm an old fisherman. I'm in nets and that, so I figured a big house was better in favour for me.
Now, for instance, you haven't got much land. You had a lot of land back there.
Well, yes, sir. I haven't got much here now. I only got around about 30 feet from the house. But out the Woody Cove now, I had 6 acres out there. I sold to the park. And when you haven't got your own land alongside your own house, I mean, it's not the same as outside. it's more benefit. You can look at your garden, go in your gardens whenever you like. That.
You never think of going back to Woody Cove, do you?
Well, I don't say well, sir, because I mean now, at present time, I don't think I could go back and build up the same house I got here. It cost me too much money to go back.
Do you wish that you were back at Woody Cove?
Oh yes, sir, yes. Many times I wish myself back there now, you know.
Woody Cove is less than a mile from Rocky Harbor, or was. There's not much left here now. A few fishing stages, a couple of crumbling fences. But Albert remembers how things used to be.
Albert, this here is where you used to have your house, is it?
Yes, sir, right there. That's where I'm little house built too. My father lived in this field here, and then my uncle lived over there in that, just over the other side of that spot of wood there. I had plenty of land around. I had 6 acres from that fence over here, where it goes on over that way, where it's Waters Point. I had plenty of land. Well, my uncle had a little garden down there just the other side. My father's house used to be one time. And I had me cellar right there. I used to have my own garden, sit my own gardens and dig them.
So now what happened when the parks people came in?
Well, sir, the park people, the man here, I just forgets his name, come here for like a boss, and you had to go to him for get a permit to shift. So I went and asked him for a permit for shift, and he said okay. So anyway, they started on my house up there where I got my house built to now. So a year I shifted in back in the house, and they took my house there and bait it down. Then when they bought me land, they gave me $3,000 for my house and land. The park did. So I'm not allowed to come back on this land no more now. And my own self, sir, I got to say, we haven't got our freedom like we had before here. One time we had our freedom, like I said, we could take our guns on our back and go in here and kill partridges and kill moose. But now, I mean, we're just tied down somehow. It's a nice little town when all ends was there, you know, but you wouldn't ever say now there was a family here now, all ends shipped out of it.
Does it make you sad when you come down here?
Oh yes, I still got a sad feeling about it, you know, because where I spend days here, you know, for 50 odd years I spend here and that.
So what do you think now when you come down and you see nothing where there used to be houses and people and horses and cattle?
Well, sir, don't jar me so bad now, because I'm just forgetting it, eh? More or less. But it's still on my mind, you know, because I lived there all my lifetime with my father and dad. Sometimes I think about it.
When you live in the shadow of the mountains, you have to expect anything. In no time at all, the winds can come whistling down and turn a sunny day into a snowstorm. One of those storms caught up with us when we went to talk with Mac Estabrooks, superintendent of Gros Morne Park. Mac is from New Brunswick. He came to Gros Morne 7 years ago. Gets pretty wild up here at times, doesn't it?
Yes, it certainly does. The winds have been recorded to be pretty excessive in this area.
Getting back now to the things I've been talking to people here about, why did you move people out? For instance, people who lived on the fringes of the towns, why were they moved into larger centers? Many of them seem very unhappy about it.
The local residents living in any of the park communities were told that they could stay there as long as they wanted to, and so could their children stay there as long as they wanted to. But if they wanted to move, the federal and provincial government would move them to a location of their choice at government expense, and they would be given a new house for nothing. So this was a fairly attractive relocation program, and many people signed up for the relocation program immediately. And the provincial government administratively looked after this particular program, and they could hardly keep up with the number of houses. They couldn't build them fast enough for the people to take advantage of them.
But aren't these people as much a part of the park as the trees and the mountains? You know, why not leave them there? Aren't they an attraction?
And at Belldowns Point, for instance, there's a tremendous area of sand dunes, pretty unique, and we would like to preserve them, but we would also like people to enjoy them. So it's a prime area for one of our day use developments, and houses in the middle of a day use requirement are just not compatible with each other. It's very difficult to try to direct tourists across private property.
A lot of people who live in the park area, in the communities around the park, say they feel very hemmed in by it, that they've lost freedom.
We are proposing that boundary modifications will take place in almost every community.
But people say they can't go out and hunt or snare or cut wood like they used to.
Well, that's true, but it's also true in any area of Newfoundland. Times have changed, and the forest has to be managed, as well as the rabbits, the moose, or caribou. We're living in a period of time where management must take over, and it must be good management, and if not, we're going to lose a lot of our resources. And people can't cut anywhere in the province without permits, and this is the same as Gros Morne. And of course we couldn't permit them to cut everywhere in the park, because we have to look at our preservation mandate, and we have to look at our development objectives, and certainly the objectives of the local people. And we try to put these all together to come up with an approach that perhaps will not permit Parks Canada to achieve all of their objectives, nor the people to achieve all of their objectives. But hopefully there's room for everybody, and that's what we're trying to achieve. This area has a tremendous potential in tourism. Last summer we received over 250,000 visitors at Gros Morne, and this represents millions of dollars that were left behind in tourism. We know that the tourists are spending perhaps $4 million a year in this area. It's certainly been an economic boost to the area, certainly far more than what would have been lost in a few logs.
Even though the park allows some cutting and snaring, it's only a temporary thing. The original parks agreement says these traditional activities can only continue for so long.
The people that were residing here in 1973, when the park was established, and their children would be permitted to continue these extractive activities as long as they reside here in Gros Morne. So 80 years approximately, these activities would phase out.
What sort of a future plan is that for a community? We should have the right, if we need to go in, snare rabbits the same as everyone else, and cut our wood. If it's sitting there for 50 years or 500 years and nobody is using it, well, that's all the better. But if we need it, at least it's there for us, rather than have to go to the park and say, can we go in? And then maybe 50 years from now, a superintendent or a park warden, whatever, will say, well, nobody's cut there for 45 years. You can't go in there now. We don't want that. We want to know for my children and so on and so forth, that it's there and the freedom is there for us to exercise if we need to.
It's been 9 years since Gros Morne Park opened. 9 years to see how the rules and regulations have affected the communities. Over the last couple of years, the people and the park have been talking about changes, looking for some middle ground. This summer, Parks Canada will announce a new policy for Gros Morne. Maybe it will have the answers.
We all realize that there are changes. We are not asking to go back 30 years. We're asking for a bright chance for the future.